exclusively on ESPN Plus. UFC 313, Saturday. Reigning light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira defends his title against number one contender Magomed Ankalaev, and an explosive lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Pazzi. UFC 313, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on ESPNPlus.com/PPV.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Hello, Americans. Stand by for news.
This is the Classic Guitar Rock Daily Update. All the classic rock news of the day. With your host, Jeremy Lunnan.
Hold your gas station fountain drink high. It's time for the Daily Update. Do you realize 5 in a row? I'm a big kid now. 5 days in a row. We had the update. That's pretty good for me. So that's great. Now I can't promise we'll do 5 for 5 next week. But I did. And this may be the first time I've done 5 days in a row that it's actually been a daily update. Hooray for me. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump to the news. We got some interesting things, some cautionary tales today. And what do I mean by cautionary tales? They're not necessarily ripped from the headline, crucial breaking news, but they're more reflective in nature. One particularly that we will get to here shortly. But first, let's start with this. Kevin Cronin, I'm an REO Speedwagon fan. I'm not going to lie. I like REO Speedwagon. I'm a big fan. We play a lot of REO Speedwagon on the Classic Guitar Rock Radio. Kevin Cronin, who's slowly over the last about 15 years transitioned into a grandma, apparently. He's got grandma glasses. He's got a grandma hairdo. John Bon Jovi, he's kind of done the same. So there's kind of this Axl Rose, right? They all kind of start to look grandmotherly. And I'm not talking about, their sexuality or anything. I just mean they look like grandmas. That's all I mean. That's all I mean by that. The hair, the glasses, that's what we've got to look forward to, guys, I guess. Anyways, Kevin Cronin has announced his first solo show of 2025. Yes, he's going out solo. So back in September, well, let me just jump to this. In September, they announced that they would cease touring. And, REO Speedwagon, they've kind of been like Cheap Trick and Styx, right? They just continually go out and tour and put on great shows. They got a great catalog, put out good shows, whatever. They've never stopped. So they've been very busy. Well, back in September, they announced they would cease touring at the end of 2024 due to irreconcilable differences between Cronin and bassist Bruce Hall. So this was kind of similar to the whole Journey scenario. I don't know all the details, but Bruce underwent back surgery and was unable to return to performing as they had originally hoped. So basically I think Cronin was the only original person there anyways. And with Bruce not there, I mean, it was basically a Kevin Cronin show anyways. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, was money involved? Is Cronin, if he doesn't have Bruce, I'm just thinking out loud, if Bruce isn't there, whoever he brings in as a hired gun to play bass, ain't going to get paid as well as Bruce was. Just putting it all together there, just thinking about it. There are now REO Speedwagon is slated through the end of the year, so they will still until their last gig as REO Speedwagon will be December 21st. Well, beginning next year in 2025, Cronin's going out as Kevin Cronin. What's the tour called? Well, it's a single concert on January 25th in Thackerville, Oklahoma. Yeah. Thackerville. Never heard of it. And I'm from Oklahoma. The concert is entitled Kevin Cronin, The Songs of REO Speedwagon. Now, I can't promise, but I bet if you go see REO Speedwagon on the 21st of December and go see Kevin Cronin and The Songs of REO Speedwagon, I bet it's the exact same band. I bet it is. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised. So we got that going on. Here's what Cronin says. This is I think it's from a press release. Listen for the AI sound here. Let's see if it's artificially intelligent. Let's see. I know all about artificial intelligence. Any intelligence I have is artificial. During the late 70s and through the 1980s, Alan Gratzer, Neil Doty, Bruce Hall, the late great Gary Richrath, and I all formed what our loyal REO Speedwagon fans have come to call the classic REO lineup. By the way, quiz for Doc. What is REO Speedwagon? Who knows? Where did they get the name REO Speedwagon? REO Speedwagon was a company that made truck chassis, fire trucks, water trucks, delivery trucks. And I've seen one in a junkyard, actually. That was a company. That was the name of the truck chassis manufacturer. Yes, Russ says it is an automobile. It was a company that made trucks. And in fact, my uncle in his old scrapyard, there was an old REO truck. There you go. It's amazing. Back to his statement. Cronin says, these current bumps in the road, meaning the fact that REO Speedwagon is done, that's kind of a bump. These current bumps in the road cannot alter our legacy, take away any of what we accomplished together, or change what the music means to our fans. As I go full speed ahead into the REO shows for the next couple of months and exciting adventures in the new year, I know I have much more music to make, many more songs to sing, and who knows what else the future may bring. Meanwhile, I will continue to do my part in making sure Gary's songs live on forever. And as the rest of us head off down our own separate paths, I wish everyone only the best in their future adventures and endeavors. I'm kind of making fun a little bit, but I've always liked Kevin Cronin. I've always liked REO Speedwagon. I saw them actually open for Styx early 2000s, probably 2002. They're a great band, great live band, great catalog. He's an entertainer. I mean, so I have nothing but good feelings for REO Speedwagon. Here's the cautionary tale. And there's a few things we want to dissect and chew on and digest in this. Again, not breaking news, but I just read this on Ultimate Classic Rock this morning, and I thought this is worth exploring. They interview, actually, Ultimate Classic Rock didn't interview. This is a is it a podcast? Yeah, the Bob Lefsetz podcast. I'm not familiar with Bob Lefsetz. Which reminds me of a joke, right? Remember the joke about the guy named George Lipschitz? Have you ever heard that story? Yeah, there's a guy named George Lipschitz, and everyone made fun of him for his name, George Lipschitz. They all laughed at his name, and he says, "Yeah, I've got so tired of people making fun of me. I've had to legally change my name. I changed it to Fred Lipschitz." Oh well. So where was I going with this? Steve Porcaro founding member of Toto, also brother of Jeff Porcaro, phenomenal drummer who died, I think, in 92. So he's on this interview with Bob Lefsetz, not Lipschitz, Lefsetz, talking about how they had to fire their lead singer after their most important, successful album back in 1982. That's when Toto 4 came out. Toto 4 won 6 Grammy Awards. Those of you that aren't old enough or don't remember, that album was all over in 82 and 83 and 84, right? Because it had long legs, right? There's lots of songs on it. Rosanna, Africa. Those are the only 2 I can think of right off the bat, but just a phenomenal, and the whole album's awesome. It's Toto. It's Toto. I mean, these guys, we think of Toto, but they're the band behind Michael Jackson. I mean, they most of them played on Thriller, right? They're playing on all kinds of albums. All the members of Toto, multi-talented. Anyways, they have this phenomenal album, Toto 4 that comes out in 82. That's, like I said, won 6 Grammys. They're at the top of the world. And they have to fire Bobby Kimball, who is their lead singer, the guy that sang, Hold the Line, Rose. Toto's interesting because they got like 3 singers in the band at least. So it's hard to say there's a lead singer. Bobby Kimball, I guess you'd say, is the lead singer because all he did was sing, right? But Luke sings. What's his name? The David Pace, he sings. They all sing back. So super talented. But they had to fire Bobby because of substance abuse. Okay, here's the cautionary tale part. Let's talk about this. So Steve is talking about this, and he says, talking about Bobby's substance abuse, it was the usual stuff in the early 80s, to be honest with you. I mean, we were all at the party, so to speak. So that was so pervasive in that time. A lot of drugs. Okay, a lot of drugs. And Steve is saying we all did it, right? We all did it. Unfortunately, if you're the lead singer, it's a little harder to cover it up. Let's be honest, right? He even says that. But when you're the lead singer of the band, there's a time when you can pull that off, those late nights and heavy drinking and whatever, and still do your gig. I can say that Bobby wasn't doing anything the rest of us weren't doing, but he was the lead singer. And it just would become apparent when he couldn't perform. Okay. It was heartbreaking. We had found our chemistry. We had found what clicks, what works for us. We had figured it out. But then we had been working so hard up to that point. You have to understand, we'd been just constantly in the studio or on the road up to that point. By the time we did Toto 4, and it was hugely successful, and we toured behind it, everybody was exhausted and kind of needed a break. So they took a break. The problem is, Bobby didn't really use the break to clean himself up. Okay. Porcaro continues, quote, when we finally got around to making a follow-up to Toto 4, which I think is the Isolation album, better watch out, there's a stranger in town. I mean, there's some good stuff on that album, but it ain't no Toto 4. No. When we finally got around to making a follow-up to Toto 4, a lot of the bad habits, let's say, that had been developing had gotten to a point where people just couldn't perform at the level they wanted to, that we needed them to. So talking about Bobby's problem here, we wound up having to switch lead singers, which we hated doing. We hated doing that. It was really traumatic for the band. Okay, so what's the cautionary tale? Well, the obvious one is don't do drugs. Okay. Don't do it. The good news is I think most people realize that. So you look one of my favorite bands ever, UFO. My contention is, had they not been such big druggies, they would have been way more successful. Right? They let the drugs really impair their ability to perform at a top level. And that said, Strangers in the Night, the greatest live album ever. I mean, they were awesome, but I really think had they not been so into the drugs, they would have been bigger. They would have maybe achieved the notoriety they should have. Hi, Marlon. Marlon, I'm reading an email from you later, by the way. Okay. I think it's from you. I think Marlon, did you send me an email? Well, you'll see. Right. We're going to talk about that. Thanks for checking in. Marlon, by the way, if you notice his picture there for his profile, one of the greatest albums ever, Michael Schenker's Assault Attack. Awesome. So there's the whole drug thing, right? The drugs have derailed and killed so many people in the music industry. Just don't do it. But here's another interesting part I wanted to talk about. So he talks about how they never, Toto 4, that was the top. They never got that big again. So once Bobby was going to, and I'm not saying it's only because of Bobby. I think a major point is what's coming up here in this next quote here is music change, right? By the way, Bobby Kimball did return in 1998 and was back with him for a while. But by then, the whole world had changed. Music had changed. Porcaro says, all of a sudden, that style of music, that polished kind of what our detractors called corporate rock, suddenly became very unpopular. And that's what the hipster critics, like at the Rolling Stone and all those other useless magazines, right? They would diss on musicianship, right? They would diss on, pick a band, Toto, Foreigner, Journey, that most of us consider good bands. Oh, that's corporate rock. It's corporate rock. Yeah, give us a real band like Nirvana that knows 3 chords. That's real. Okay. Sorry. All of a sudden, that style of music, that polished kind of what our detractors called corporate rock, suddenly became very unpopular. Bands like Nirvana were all of a sudden real popular. The whole Seattle thing was starting to happen. Toto's whole style of music with these synthesizer extravaganzas were becoming very unpopular, and the record company let us know they weren't as thrilled as they were before. I mean, if we had delivered enough other hits, they'd be okay. But you know what? It was just the music world was changing. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of it. And I'm not dissing Nirvana. I'm just saying that, and here's what the music industry is and completely became in the 90s. Go watch interviews with Frank Zappa talking about the business of music. By the way, the guy was a genius and he got it, right? And he even makes the case that back in the 60s, these cigar chomping, businessmen from the record label that knew nothing about music, he said they let people be more experimental than the later record execs who smoked pot and had long hair that came along. Those long-haired pot-smoking record execs that you'd think were all into, they were the worst ones to work with because then it became completely formulaic. And we saw that so much in the early 90s with grunge. I mean, it's always happened, but with the grunge especially. Who is it? Night Ranger. Night Ranger had a contract. Night Ranger had been very popular through the 80s. Their was it called 7 Wishes? Their 7 Wishes album, super popular. I think Damn Yankees, same thing might have happened to Damn Yankees. They had like 2 or 3 very successful albums. All of a sudden, once Nirvana broke, all people wanted was the Seattle sound. And so record companies were basically paying these rock bands to not record an album. We know we have a contract with you for one more album, but we'd rather just pay you $2 million and have you go away. And that's what they would do. Because the directive was, we want grunge, right? So then over the course of a 2 or 3 year period, you got every flannel shirt, shoegazing 3-chord band, sign it all up. That's not to say there weren't some talented ones. There were, but the musicianship, the musical talent went in the toilet. I mean, it really did. It really did. Okay, let's move on now. Speaking of drugs, Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynott, of course, another example of a dude that drugs ruined him. Okay, he died of a heart. That's what they say, died of a heart attack. Well, yeah, but what caused the heart attack? Drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. That's the message. Thin Lizzy will release a stripped down new album called Acoustic Sessions with archival contributions from late frontman Phil Lynott and former drummer Brian Downey. This comes out in January. So this is kind of cool. The Beatles have done this. Other people have done this. The technology is there. This is not AI, but it is technology mixing the past with the present, right? So what they've done is they've gone back to Thin Lizzy's self-titled debut, 1971. Also 1972's Shades of a Blue Orphanage and 1973's Vagabonds of the Western World. So they went back to these first three albums and they are basically taking the vocals and the drums and adding like new acoustic parts to it. Now I went right before I started this, I went and listened to the new acoustic version of Whiskey in a Jar. It sounds really cool. And I love that song. By the way, if you tune into Classic Guitar Rock Radio, you'll hear not only the album version of Whiskey in a Jar, but we also play the Metallica cover of Whiskey in a Jar, which I love. I think it's great. And I noticed I snuck in a plug for the radio. That's what I did right there. Okay. So Eric Bell, one of the original guitarists of Thin Lizzy, says, quote, I remember recording Ire from our debut album Thin Lizzy in 71. I wrote the main guitar part first on acoustic, and then we built it up from there. I played the 12-string acoustic throughout the track and introduced the electric on top. This was useful in the studio in Belfast recently, where we recorded fresh guitar parts to allow us to create new Thin Lizzy acoustic versions of some of our favorite songs. I'll get that later. By recreating those original acoustic parts and adding the vocals, which Philip laid down on the day, and those original drum parts, which Brian came up with in the original recording session. So again, they're adding a new acoustic guitar parts to the first three albums. Marlon says, first three Lizzy, not very good. I kind of have to agree. I mean, I didn't want to say it, but you kind of forced my hand. If you're a fan of Thin Lizzy and you go back and listen to those first three, you're like, yeah, this isn't really that good. I agree. They had to develop, they grew into it, but man, you play Jailbreak. Oh, dude. Yeah. The first three, not that great. I got to agree with you, but it's kind of cool to go listen to these new versions because they've blended it. I mean, if someone didn't tell you, you'd have no idea that, they're piecing a 45, 50-year-old track, vocal part and drums with new acoustic guitars. I mean, it sounds really good. It sounds very natural and flawless. The producer, Richard Whitaker, said, quote, after sifting through all the Decca recordings, I presented a list of ideas to the record company. However, in most cases, additional development and material was required. So the guys at the label approached Eric, who was happy to get involved with the project. And between us, I think we've made something really quite unique and special. So you should check it out. That's worth a deep dive. And yes, Marlon says the first three albums are folky. They are folky. Whiskey in a Jar is a folk song. Totally. But yeah, it does not, when you think of classic Thin Lizzy, you don't think of what you hear on the first three Lizzy albums. Okay. Now I honestly do not mean to sound snarky when I say this. Okay, I don't, so take it for what it's worth. Rare Bird Books has set a July 15th, 2025 release date for Ghost Notes, a new memoir from Poison drummer Ricky Rocket.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Do we want that? I mean, are people clamoring for a Ricky Rocket memoir? I don't know. But it's coming out. So there will be a memoir from Ricky Rocket. Okay. I got an email here from Marlon. Marlon, tell me if this is what you sent. Just a short email. By the way, any of you can email me, classicguitarrock@mail.com, and I just read them. You send it good, bad, indifferent. If you send me an email, I read it on the update. From Marlon, subject, Magnus Carlsen. Short email. Marlon's a man of few words. Yeah, it's okay. He confirms it is from Marlon. Subject line, Magnus Carlsen. Just discovered this guy. Amazing. Check out his band, Freefall. That's the email. Short and sweet. Marlon, I haven't checked it out. As soon as this update is over, I'm going to go check out Magnus Carlsen and his band, Freefall. So thanks for the tip. We'll check it out. Now, along those lines, because I haven't plugged CGR Radio enough, you'll notice starting yesterday, last night, in fact, we've added, we're starting to play new music. I know it sounds weird because it's called classic guitar, but we call in the actual category. When you program your songs, you come up with categories, right? So the category we call this is new music that doesn't suck. That's the name of the category. New music that doesn't suck. So for now, we're just doing it about once an hour. You're going to hear the little sweeper that says, here's new music that doesn't suck. And then we play a track from an old band, a legacy band, but a new song from a legacy band. So like you'll hear just the stuff I've added so far. There's some new Priest in there. There's some new Saxon, some new Blue Oyster Cult, new Scorpions, new Striper, and I'm adding more. In fact, if you have recommendations, when I say new, let's say in the last 3 years or so, if there's a classic rock band that has put out new material, because I'm that's what I'm in the process of doing, is researching that. These are just ones I've added along with the help from Rich Hanna, who hosts the Classic Metal Vault. These are just bands that off the top of my head I thought of. I knew they had recent material. I'd love for you to email me classic bands that have new material out that we can start playing on the station. This stuff doesn't get played anywhere else. We're going to play it. So yeah, shoot me an email. And even if it's maybe it's not a legacy band, but maybe it could be a new band, but they play classic rock style music, not thrash metal, right? Not crazy. I mean, melodic rock, classic rock sounding stuff. I'm open to that. So open to your suggestions. Shoot me an email, classicguitarrock@mail.com. Love to add that stuff. So anyways, that's all I got for you today. Now I'm planning to next week. We'll try and do an update every day. We'll see how it goes. Take care, live long and prosper. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Thanks for listening. You can email Jeremy at classicguitarrock@mail.com.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Tune in each weekday for the Classic Guitar Rock Daily Update.